It's a real pleasure to be here today. This is a super comfortable space for me. I was really surprised when I walked in. I was thinking that we were going to be in an auditorium or some such thing. And one of the reasons that I'm comfortable with our business is that when I was a little girl growing up, we had a wood shop in our basement. And this was not included in my talk today, but we had wood lathes and table saws and drill presses and all of that sort of thing. And it's sort of one of the pieces that I often don't really talk about when I'm asked to speak. So I just thought I'd add that in before we get started. So I became one of the owners of Sambat in 2007, and I will get into exactly how that all came to be. But I have to tell you that there's something inherently motivational to have your staff and yourself be involved in making a product that is then seen on television on the weekend and is being used to hit home runs. I brought several bats here today. This is one of the bats that was a replica of what was used by Barry Bonds for his career. So you guys can have a look at those a little later. There we go. So what do? We sell worldwide. We make 15 to 20,000 bats a year. We have over 400 different model variations, and we deal with the best in the world. So it's quite a challenge every day. We deal with player agents, we deal with teams, we deal with equipment managers, as well as private customers through Shopify. And so obviously we have to keep that team motivated, and I would say at this point they function extremely well. But to start, I would really like to show a video that the Shopify did on us last summer. Just to give you some background, we've launched 4 Shopify websites over the years, and we were one of the very first Shopify customers when they only had 8 to 10 people. So as a result of that, they phone us a lot, and we've gotten a lot of free publicity. It's pretty fantastic. So last summer, they came into our factory, and they did this really cool video, which we also showed down at the Major League Baseball winter meetings this last December in San Francisco.
A few major things that make the perfect maple bat. One is straightness of grain, the density of the wood, and the craftsman that put it together. I am Sam, and I made the first maple bat for the Major League Baseball.
These are the details of how a Sam bat is made.
I always thought if I was ever going to be successful at something, it would be something that would be one piece and be perfectly made, and that happens to be a baseball bat.
Sambat makes roughly 4,000 bats a year for Major League Baseball, each one from a solid piece of maple wood. And over the last 22 years, they've worked with some of the biggest names that have transcended the game, including all-time home run champion, Barry Bonds.
Barry Bonds hit 73 home runs for us one year. That's why we called the bat 2K1, so I could remember.
Today, Sam is going to make the 2K1. And to start, he has to pick the right piece of wood.
To make one bat by hand, you do have to read the wood. And we learned to read wood very early in our careers, and we also learned to weigh and determine density very early.
After finding the right piece of lumber, Sam uses a player's template bat to cut the initial shape. After the initial cut, the bat is measured down to 1/100 of an inch.
The first bat I made, I spent probably close to 10, if not 15 hours on. The carving and cutting of the bat was 5 minutes of that time. The rest of the time was sanding.
Sanding is the most important step in the bat making process. And because of that, there are 3 separate stations.
When we were using the hand sander on the lathe, that is all cutting across the grain of the bat. So then when we take it over to the wheel to wheel the bat, that's when you finally start to see some results.
Although lots of woodworkers use this sander, this one was a custom modification built in Sam's garage.
It's being brushed the right direction, and you're also brushing the bat that direction. So that gives you a smooth factory finish.
Okay, so the sanding is done. Now it's time to go to the paint shop.
Maple used outdoors has to be painted or covered. Otherwise, it has open grain, it absorbs moisture, it doesn't do very well.
Each bat is then hand-painted with at least one coat of water-based paint.
You have to check off at each step. If we don't have an inspector at the end of the line, everybody inspects. If that flaw shows up in the paint shop, then the bat is instantly rejected, no matter what stage it's at.
After a quick spray to seal the grain, the bats dry for at least 30 minutes. Then it's time for the final details and the final inspection.
If a player doesn't see the shape he wants to see, then we've failed ourselves. They have to be perfect. Perfection is part of the game.
There are 11 people on the Sambat team, and all of them are master craftsmen.
The crew here are wonderful craftsmen, and they're very dedicated in each department. I have a lot of respect for people who do things repetitively and correctly, constantly.
Sambat has roughly 100 players that use their bat in Major League Baseball each season. And while the players have changed, one rule has always remained the same.
Rule 110 makes the perfect baseball bat. It insists that it be wood. And it's one of the big reasons the game is still magical. The bat is a perfect thing.
That was Sam, and one fun thing about having people come in to do a video on you, they're never 100% accurate. So just to tell you, Sam does not make all the bats. And so he's 73 years old. He started the business 22 years ago, and he hasn't been working in the factory for over 10 years. So when the Shopify guys came in, they said, well, we really want to show Sam making a bat. So I had to, in terms of motivation, I had to calm a few of our staff down. So they weren't too thrilled that the story wasn't 100% accurate, but there you go. Anyway, in truth, this all started in Sam's garage. It started in 1996-97. It started as a result of a bar bat. So I'm not sure if any of you know the history behind Sam Bat, but Sam liked to frequent the Mayflower Pub down on Elgin Street, and his friend Bill McKenzie, who was a scout for the Colorado Rockies, basically challenged him one day. He said, you know, they're breaking too many bats, and the bats were made of ash at the time. He said, maybe you can do something about that. So Sam went back home and started to research all of the wood properties, and I noticed that here we have some maple up on the wall behind me. But so it was pretty cool. So he was building a staircase, a stair banister, and he thought, well, maybe I'll try this piece that I happen to have in the house. And by good fortune, the piece that he had happened to be a fairly lightweight piece of maple, because everything in our production relates back to weight, which is an odd thing. Normally when you're making a piece of furniture, you're not so concerned about the weight. The look, the grain, the staining, etc., but not so much the weight. So anyway, all that to say, he was extremely tenacious, managed to get his product into the hands of Joe Carter. Joe snuck it into a game in Toronto, and he hit a home run the first time up. And as they say, that's history. So Sam, as a result, he was over the age of 50, so you're never too late to start a company or to change an entire industry. He received a tremendous amount of media growth and attention. He was tremendously tenacious, and he wound up getting the bat into the hands of Barry Bonds. And to quote Barry Bonds, from his lips to my ears, Sam was the first person who gave me exactly what I wanted. And so what this all is about is physics, and it's the transference of energy from the player to the bat to the ball. And it's all, so this is the reason why we have over 400 different model variations, because it's all of us are individuals, and we all have different physical properties. So it's quite amazing. I'm going to move on here. So, yeah?
So you make bats for individual players? not
Yes.
just wholesale bats?
Yes, yes, yep, absolutely. We sell worldwide to individual players, agents, teams, collectively, and dealers worldwide also. Yeah, thank you. When we bought into, so this bat got a tremendous amount of media attention. As a result of that, also there was a lot of competition flowed in. And so Sambat was growing exponentially, and Sam couldn't keep up with it. So he had managed to get himself into quite a bit of hot water at one point, and that was how I wound up getting involved. So in 2005, 2004, he got into a deal to distribute the product through Wilson Sporting Goods, thinking that it was going to be a wonderful thing. Unfortunately, the deal did not go very well. It soured, and he wound up losing his US distribution, which was terrible. So he had a deal on the table to sell the company, and Barry Bonds was coming up to breaking the world record. And what happened was he went out drinking with my other business partner, Paul, one Saturday night. And I think Paul was absolutely drunk when he said that we were going to buy into the company and get involved. So the next day, Paul comes over to my house and presents me with this. And I had never heard of Sambat. I didn't know much about baseball, aside from the fact that when I looked at the list of players that he had, I recognized all the names. And to me, that was absolutely incredible that that this had actually transcended baseball. These guys were superstars, and how some small company in Ottawa was supplying bats to superstars, I was astonished. I've always been interested in the bat. I thought this is an amazing opportunity. Opportunity does not knock every day, and decided that the logo was absolutely fantastic, as have many before me. And so basically, over the course of a weekend, we decided to help him out and to buy into the company. That being said, when you buy into a company, well, sometimes there's lemons. And when you buy into a company that's in financial distress, it can be extremely challenging. So one of the reasons why we had been convinced into buying into the company was the fact that Barry Bonds had given Sam $40,000 to ensure that he had his product because he was coming up to break the world record. So I got in there, and to say that the staff, we were having this fantastic event likely to happen, but I did not exactly have motivated staff. Sam had moved his factory over to Gatineau from Ottawa. They had been in a very small facility. The facility was old. It was really uncomfortable. And we had a lot of staff issues. There was bullying, there were inefficiencies, everyone was talking about everybody else. And I didn't know quite how I was going to turn this thing around. First thing I did, though, was looked at how people were operating. And it's something that, I don't know if you guys have talked about this, but it's management by walking around. So there's nothing like actually being beside people. I had read about this in university, but it's not something that I'd really ever had to do. Most of my work environment had been with professional staff and not in a specific manufacturing environment. And so I started to do this routinely, basically a number of times a day, and realized that a number of the things that they were doing were very inefficient, and that they were really bogging things down. So the first thing that I did was buy a machine, a doweling machine, which basically cut down what used to take 2 days to do into an hour. And it really meant that you could speed up the process, and then people saw change, and they saw that it wasn't going to just be the same old routine, that we were going to be making change constantly. And so they found that very, very motivational. Now, it's also a great way to find out when you don't have staff that are performing and when people are stealing from you, which is the unfortunate thing. And that was what was happening, and part of the reason why Sam had some trouble. So we had a core of some really great people, and they were really being bogged down by a few people that were sort of like the bad apples in the bushel. So that of course, I had to deal with, which was not easy. But now we have really incredible, capable, innovative, and very creative staff. A large number of our staff have either gone to university or they're actually from Algonquin here, which is the other thing. And they are on salary. They're not hourly paid people, which is they find very motivational. And when I first was involved with the company, one of my older staff came to me and he said, because I had been used to dealing with accountants and professional staff, that he said, you know, when you open your mouth, he goes, they don't know what you're saying. They don't even get it at all. So I was not connecting with them, with the terms I was using. And so I learned very quickly that I absolutely had to change the dynamic and change what I was doing to get the right result. So I've also found that dealing with people is really interesting. Even though now we have so many ways of communicating, whether it be text or email or phone call or face-to-face, everybody prefers something a little different. And so one of the ways that I've managed to connect with most of our staff is to determine how do they respond to me, and really watching that. And see, some of our guys are quite shy. They would actually prefer me to text them as opposed to a face-to-face conversation. The other thing that was really funny was that being in a production environment, and I was used to business meetings and all the rest of it, the staff were not. Every single time that they had a meeting, people had been laid off. So they didn't want that. It was like the kiss of death. Nobody wanted to come to a meeting. So I had to bring food and beverages and sort of, settle them all down and get everything under control that way. So needless to say, we were able to have meetings now, but understanding that had been a real issue was relevant. Now, I don't know if you guys follow what goes on in the States or not, but one person who's obviously very successful is Michael Bloomberg. And he has a philosophy that for meetings, everyone should stand. That most things happen within the first 10 or 15 minutes of a meeting, and that you really don't have to sit around for 2 hours to discuss something. So I find that this is also very productive. We do a lot of meetings on the floor. But let's face it, communication is absolutely critical if you're all going to get the job done. So one of the things that happens with us is because we have a Shopify backend, we're able to have our staff look at all of the data from our business on a daily basis, which is fantastic. We use Yachtpo for our social media and customer engagement software. So I'm able to forward to our staff that, wow, we got a really great review on something, and it happens every few hours. And it's really, really great little hit for everybody to keep them motivated. Let's face it, it's all very nice to say, it's exciting to make a bat, but we do have to make a lot of bats in a year. And that can be challenging. So it's to keep everybody fresh and motivated is important. That being said, when you have people on your staff, I don't know if you guys know the story, everybody's paddling and somebody in the boat and somebody's shooting at them. If somebody's paddling backwards, they're most likely going to get dumped out of the boat. So that's a reality of business, and it's something to keep in mind when you're going into your jobs. A lot of young people here is that it's good to constructive criticism is one thing, but if you're actively not moving with the team, you're not going to be around for very long. It's a necessity of reality of business. Now, anybody who knows me really well knows that I believe in seize the day. I don't like losing time. I don't like missing opportunity. And none of us know what's going to happen to us from this day to the next. And a prime example of that is that my home was hit by the tornado in 2018 in Arlington Woods. So I was at ground zero. So in 15 seconds, the homes around me were destroyed. Our home sustained a huge amount of damage. We were very lucky to still have it standing. But so I've had a number of things happen in my life that I feel that you can't waste what you have. You don't know what's happening. We all like to plan, and we all do this stuff. And especially at my age, I get tired of everybody talking about retirement planning, because it's like, are you kidding me? I'm not going to be doing that anytime soon. But in terms of your own sort of careers, and it's really good to always be pushing forward. If you see something, when we got into this business, obviously we seized an opportunity that we knew it wasn't going to be around for very long. But that's true with everything in your life, whether it's interpersonal relationships, getting back to people, all the rest of it. All of these opportunities have tremendous value. And if you wait for the perfect time in a business cycle to do anything, there is no such thing as the perfect time. And unfortunately, a lot of us are trained to be quite perfectionist, and that can sort of fly in the face of that. But there's a balance with all of these things. So we have, one of the reasons why we have done so well, whether it being in Sony video game MLB The Show, there's a prime example. I get the phone call, the guy needs a quick answer, and the beauty of being a small company is, oh, would you like the legal department? Okay, sure. So really easy, you get the yes really fast. So we were recently, when we were in San Diego, Sony invited us into their studios, and I was so touched that we actually had been the very first brand that they had approached because of our reputation to be showcased in their video. So a video game, which we were just thrilled about. And I have to say they have some absolutely fantastic facilities, nothing like I had ever seen before. In terms of opportunity too, last year we got a phone call at the last minute from the San Francisco Giants. And what they wanted was a series of bats to showcase for the Barry Bonds retirement. San Francisco was retiring his number 25. And so this was in August 2018. Well, we got about 2 weeks notification that we had to craft the bats, multiple changes, and also get them somehow to California in that time. And so, needless to say, we jumped on it. The video that they created was called 25 City, and it was narrated by Danny Glover. So, flash forward to 2019, after 2019 didn't start out so great, with being hit by the tornado and all. And so we actually wound up getting a Emmy Award for props. So open up this box, comes to the office, and I think you have a picture of the Emmy Award. So we wound up getting a actual Emmy Award. We were kidding that we should get the statue and walk around with it and do a runway at the factory and everything. It was like sort of fun. So anyway, needless to say, we're very, very, my only regret, of course, is they have to put a person's name on this. They've put my name. I would much prefer, of course, that it was our Sambat was on the name, but that's not. I'm not returning it anytime soon. Just to say. So, okay, I'll just if I can do the next one. Yeah, teamwork. Okay, so teamwork is really critical. We have a functioning factory, but we do not function like a traditional factory. We have a lot of crossover of abilities and tasks, and there is no set start time. We have staggered stop time, which is quite unheard of for a small team. And it's all based on what works for the individual and how it all comes together. Let's face it, most factories, it's like the buzzer goes at 8 o'clock in the morning and people go in and whatever. You do not craft a product of this quality, in my opinion, doing that. Every stage of production, as Sam mentioned, everyone is a professional and they are able to discard something that they consider to not be top-notch, absolutely 100%. So in doing this, we've added a lot of value for our staff, and it's inherently motivational because they're not fighting either their personal schedule or their partner's schedule. And I'm assuming most of you don't have children yet, but that can always be a challenge, working around the kids' schedule and babysitting. So what we try and do is really work to that. I used to be a fan of the show Undercover Boss, and so when we introduce new processes or procedures, I usually do them too. In fact, the other day I painted 30 black bats because we were making some changes and I wanted to see what that actually entailed. Fortunately, I worked in a paint store when I was a student, so this isn't too much of a stretch. But nonetheless, there's nothing like having somebody roll up their sleeves and actually tackle a task themselves to see how long it takes, to see how the ergonomics of the setup, and to see if it really makes sense. This is actually one thing that I had learned at Canada Post when I was doing labor negotiations. We were at the Chateau Laurier. We were negotiating all through the night and around the clock. And it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was looking after a team of people that were responsible for getting all of the language to the table the next morning. So it's about 3 a.m. We're all pretty tired, and we're doing a lot of photocopying. And there was one of the VPs that, truthfully, I wasn't very keen on. He wasn't my favorite. And he came down and came into the room, and he saw what was going on. And without much ado, he just took off his jacket and rolled up his sleeves and started photocopying. And to be honest, prior to that, I thought he was kind of a jerk. And it was so refreshing that he actually saw the need, filled in the gap, and was very positive. So, and in that part, there's really no such thing as a Joe job in an organization. Every piece matters, and having respect for that is really, really important. So the next thing I want to talk about quick, when I was growing up, when I was growing up, my mother would always say no, okay? So she never said yes, so whatever. You give up asking if somebody always says no. Why would you say? So I have actually 3 daughters, and so I tried not to do this actively. So, and this is something that I try to pass along to other people. No is tiring. It is a full stop. It limits enthusiasm. It creates a huge amount of negativity. And it really discourages your staff from coming forward with any new ideas. So I have found that over the last 12 years, the best ideas have come from in-house. We have actually tried to farm out several things in our production or social media. Every time it's been a disaster, no one has gotten it as good as our team. And so I do not do that anymore, and I don't even try. So it's really important in an organization to stop negativity in its tracks. We're all very, very fortunate people here. We all won the lottery. We're in Canada. And so it's really easy to focus on the negative. So I'm going to read you a blog post that I found on Devil's Advocate that I really do like, and it's by Daniel D. Piazza. One thing that bothers me is the concept of playing devil's advocate. Oftentimes we come up with a good idea, friends, family, and coworkers will look to find reasons why it won't work. They'll look for reasons why we might fail, but they'll frame it in the guise of trying to help us. I was just playing devil's advocate, but that's not helpful at all, is it? For one, looking for reasons why something won't work isn't a good formula for actually making them work. It's not encouraging, and it just spread bad vibes. But more than anything, it's easy. Easy for those who are not in the arena to judge the warrior, easier for those sitting on the sidelines to speculate while they hide from taking action themselves. If someone you care about is starting a project that they love, don't look for reasons why it won't work. Flood them with reasons why it will. And here's the key. If the idea doesn't work, that's fine too. The objective of the game in life is to take action. We can't always control outcomes, but we can always control our actions. So encourage them to keep trying until they get better results. The devil doesn't need any more advocates. He's fine. So I do really live by this motto. I've had this happen to me numerous times in my career, where someone tries to sideline you, and you think, they're not really being very helpful, and they're not really being very constructive. So, and now I've gotten much better as I've aged, standing up to those people, and have basically coping mechanisms as to how you divert them in your path. So. So what about happiness and motivation? It's really hard to be motivated if you're not happy. And I find that happiness is, and in general and in the workplace, is really having, it's a wonderful byproduct of doing something really well. And I'm sure the people that are working in the woodworking zone here experience that. There's nothing like creating something beautiful with your hands. And this is something that's inherent in the motivation with our staff, is there's a huge amount of joy and pride when they create something that's used by the best in the world and to success, to their success. I found that a lot of things in life, the small stuff really, really does make people extremely happy. And we've had some fun things that have happened to us that are, some would say was small. And I'm just going to run through these very quickly. When we've had some interesting requests. So Eddie Murphy asked us to do party invitations for us. For the older ones, they'll know who Eddie Murphy is, but maybe not. We have been on The Bachelorette. We've done Billy Crystal's at bat for his major league career. We're official by the ABL. Jose Bautista used us for 54 home runs. I get late night calls from Jose Canseco. This is crazy. Miguel Cabrera, Triple Crown 2012. And so just to wrap up, I hope I've talked to you and imparted a bit of our philosophy, and hopefully this has been a reasonably motivating afternoon for you. And I'd really like to thank all of the people here at Algonquin for inviting us, and Sambat.